Thank you. Welcome. I'm Marnie Jackson. I'm the Executive Director of Whidbey Environmental Action Network. With us on this call are my colleague Amanda and our board colleagues Andrea and Linda, and concerned community members who, like us, care about wetlands. So first, I want to acknowledge the long history of this land. We work in Island County on Whidbey and Camino Islands on the lands of the Coast Salish people. This was Snohomish land. These Salish sea lands and waters were home to Lushootseed speakers, people of the Coast Salish tribal communities, the Suquamish, Stillaguamish, Lower Skagit, and other tribal communities who've lived on these lands and tended them since time immemorial. And where we think of wetlands today, we see in many of our communities wetlands that have been impacted by colonialism and land use that has radically changed the face of our islands. But I think when we think about wetlands, we also can think about the stewardship of land that has taken place over uncountable generations by the first peoples of this land. So gratitude to them for their enduring legacy of care for place. If I may, I'd like to just orient you to the plan for this hour. First, I'd like to begin a slideshow and share with you some facts and some updates about the status of wetlands in the United States today. And then we'll zoom into the status of wetlands in Island County today. And on both the federal and local levels, there are some pretty critical issues that are currently at play. And there are opportunities for public voice to really shape what happens next for these critical ecological powerhouses. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and walk you through that slideshow. And then at that point, once I've shared, I'm hoping that that'll take less than half of our time together. Then we will stop the slideshow and open it up for a more informal dialogue about what is going on and what can happen next. Thank you so much. If you do have questions, I would say please feel free to drop them in the chat. And it's likely that we'll address them after the presentation. But if there's something that my colleague Amanda can address in the chat while I present, please feel free. Otherwise, I'll read the chat once I'm through with this slideshow. All right, hopefully you're seeing hopefully you're seeing a full screen view that says protecting wetlands. Is that so?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. So this is a photo of the Earth Sanctuary, which is up in Freeland. It's I would say a healthy functioning wetland. And this slideshow is not advancing. There we go. This wetland is one of many varieties, but I would say at their heart, what defines a wetland is saturation of soil. So a stream, for instance, may or may not be a wetland, depending on how saturated the soil is, but the stream banks very often are. So this image from the North American Marine Environment Protection Association, it shows qualities of a wetland. For instance, it serves as nature's filter. It dissipates stream energy, slows and stores water, cleans water while it replenishes aquifers and groundwater. It can be a vital source of habitat and nourishment for a wide variety of species. And it can actually protect against erosion because that absorbent quality of a wetland prevents topsoil loss and slows water and provides a buffer between extreme weather events and impact on the land. So a wetland is a vital part of nature's system for slowing, storing, and cleaning water. Nationally, we're experiencing staggering wetland loss. Wetland loss, according to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, is ongoing. And although over half of North American wetlands have been lost since European arrival, the rate has slowed, but it has not stopped. And in a recent study, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service shared that 221,000 additional acres of wetland were lost in the United States in the decade leading up to 2019. The stats are a little bit less alarming in Washington state, which has lost 31% of its wetland areas since the 1780s. But there's also a transformation underway. Wetlands aren't just being lost, they're being changed. And this quote from the United States Fish and Wildlife Service reads, "Our nation's remaining wetlands are being transformed from vegetated wetlands, like salt marsh and swamp, to non-vegetated wetlands, like ponds, mudflats, and sandbars." And if you can imagine the Maxwelton Valley several hundred years ago, that pre-colonial wetland would have looked like braided surface water rivulets running between and among trees in a forested wetland with an ever-changing course of surface water. And so the channelization of streams of that nature is one of the factors that have accompanied colonization and land transformation. For more on national status of wetlands and trends, you can read this report at, I'm not going to read the URL aloud to you, but you could take a screenshot or revisit this presentation on our website later, or you can just Google status and trends of wetlands. It's a very informative document, and I highly recommend checking it out. There are current and recent federal pressures that are increasing the likelihood of extreme wetland loss. The Clean Water Act has been eroded by the Trump administration, which in its first term changed the navigable waters protection rule, or I should say adopted a navigable waters protection rule, which really dramatically constrained the definition of what waters are protected by the Clean Water Act. And the Sackett versus EPA ruling in 2023 further eroded those protections by dramatically shrinking the waters that were covered by this Clean Water Act. And so I've on the right here included a link to an update from Earth Justice. They are one of our litigative environmental nonprofits that are working to defend environments in courts. And you can see on this page their map of counties, states that are most impacted by this Sackett versus EPA ruling. And on this page, you can see from Biological Diversity, the Center for Biological Diversity, that this attack on wetlands is even more expanded today with a February declaration of an intention to reclassify 700 pending wetland permits under a new quote unquote climate emergency. So at this point, the federal government is basically threatening to expedite damage to all of these red highlighted wetland areas and permitted areas. And so we're very fortunate to have organizations like the Center for Biological Diversity, which is fighting back at the national level by litigating against the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for this illegal expedition of every pending permit to fill or destroy wetlands. On the local level here in Island County, there was a pretty thorough review of wetland health and status in 2006. And so that's linked here at the bottom. A few excerpts from this, I won't read them all, but I'll just highlight that before non-Indigenous settlers began arriving, Island County may have had up to 22,000 acres of wetlands, or 17% of the county's land area. By the mid-70s, that had been reduced to about 13,000 acres. So a loss of almost 10,000 acres of wetlands in that first century of colonization. And most of the county's wetlands do purify runoff, provide habitat, and help maintain the quality of the groundwater that we rely upon. As a sole source aquifer community, it means all of our drinking water comes from under our feet. The exception being Oak Harbor, which gets its water through a pipe from the Skagit River. But that's a contract that may or may not continue into the future. So really all of us in Island County should think about caring for the aquifer health so that we can continue to have drinking water in addition to all the other benefits that water health provides. And habitat for species including great blue heron, bald eagle, osprey, western toad, and rare plant species, plus cavity nesting ducks, wood ducks, waterfowl, shorebirds, and a great many insects as well. They're not listed here, but for whom wetlands are essential. So these wetlands have been served or underserved by Island County's laws and ordinances for many years, and Island County is legally obligated to protect wetlands. There are several state laws that apply to wetlands, including the Shoreline Management Act, Water Quality Standards, and Growth Management Act. And Whidbey Environmental Action Network has litigated against Island County in the past to ask the county to make its critical areas, rules, and ordinances compliant with state law. So I've just included a couple of screenshots of court opinions and news coverage. But the long and short of it is we're asking Island County to comply with the law when it protects wetlands. And when they fall short of complying, we are faced with the choice of whether to use the court system to ask for that compliance. And we'd much rather be partners with the county in doing right for our ecosystems. So there's a recent threat to our county's wetlands, and it comes in the form of this incident of filling off Ewing Road. Now, as a one-off incident, it looks like a farmer with a wet field that is mapped as wetland, but is not year-round wet, so it has a seasonally dry period, imported a great deal of fill, 10 or more dump trucks full of fill in the heat of the summer, and spread that dirt in the low spots so that instead of being a seasonal pond being visited by waterfowl, it is now basically a puddle of muck. I haven't walked onto the land because it's private property, but it was characterized as a slurry when I spoke with the landowner in terms of the moisture content of the soil that he put into that low-lying land. And so the following pages are taken from WEAN's report to the county on this matter. And it's a one-off issue that some might say, well, what's done is done, let's ignore it. But this one sets such a dangerous precedent that it truly endangers all other wetlands on Island County agricultural land, because it very explicitly opens a huge door to wetland filling. And I'll get into why that is. So on the right, you see the particular parcel in question on the Island County wetlands map layer, where the white section is wetland. That's in the top right corner. And on the bottom, you see the National Wetlands Inventory, where the bright green is the mapped wetland. And as I mentioned, this is a seasonally wet area, so it does cross a stream. I'm sorry, a stream does cross the property. It's both a cartographic and a regulatory stream, but it's not like a flowing body of water. It's actually really a tributary to the stream that becomes part of Maxwelton Creek. And it's even a fish-bearing tributary. So despite this property looking like high and dry farmland, it contributes to the waterway that contributes to the well-being of fish. And silt and sediment dropped onto this land will make its way into that waterway. And so on the right side of the page, I have an 11-page PDF that we submitted to the county. And I'm not sure that the font size is appropriate for you to see it well, but I'll just click through. You can see that we documented what was happening. Our founder, Steve Erickson, witnessed this filling. He observed many large 10 or more piles of soil that had been brought to the site, a large dump truck in the field, and he marked the two areas on that small box on the left where it was being dumped. He spoke with the machine operator at that time from the roadside, from the public road, and was basically told to mind his own business. And by the end of that Labor Day weekend, holiday weekend, they basically had flattened out and completely filled the two low spots. And in the upper right-hand corner under the white map layer, you can kind of see near the bottom of the blue box on the right is a low depression that looks like a seasonal pond. And near the center top of the blue box is another low depression that looks like a seasonal pond. And those are the two places that are now flat layers of dirt. And here you can see the flattening work being done in the parcel closer to the road. And more documentation of the actual activity. And then what our report, the meat of our report was really a study of verifying that this is indeed wetland. So from the soil map from the USDA, you can see the the soil quality and ingredients are listed here. And it's hard for me to make out the small words, but it is basically hydric soils. And as I mentioned, a wetland is defined by its saturation of soil, less than by its appearance of visible water. It's also defined by things like what plants grow there. And so if you have aquatic reeds, for instance, it's a very good indicator that you may have a wetland. And by every measure, this area has been tested, analyzed, and mapped as a wetland. And so here, this is additional description of the map unit showing a hydric soil in its undrained state. This description goes on. And on this page, you see basically a larger view of the National Wetlands Inventory layer. So we did share that information with Island County, and they did get back to us and let us know they'd look into it. And what happened next, I'm sorry, jumped ahead. What happened next was really pretty alarming. So Island County's rules state that the continuation of existing and ongoing agricultural activities is allowed in critical areas on farmland when they are conducted with consistent best management practices. And so these BMPs by law must be consistent with or contained in either a standard farm management plan or a custom farm management plan. And the rules say that that custom plan can be developed with the Whidbey Island or the Snohomish Conservation District or with a private consultant. And so generally these BMPs need to be consistent with federal National Resource Conservation Service standards. And those standard farm management practices, farm management plan BMPs, even prohibit using tilled material from the same site to fill wetlands. So if I were to till the soil on my high spot and drag it into my low spot, I would be in violation of that BMP. And so the fact that even that much soil movement in a wetland area is illegal should be an indication that this might have been a problematic importation of soil. So I got an email from Matt Kukuk, who is the Island County Planning Assistant Director of Current Use. And he said, quote, based on our investigation and discussions with both the landowners and Whidbey Island Conservation District staff, it is our determination that the work described in the complaint is associated with existing and ongoing agriculture and is compliant with ICC 17.02b.300.b.1a and the applicable BMP requirements of Exhibit B. And the emphasis there on existing and ongoing agriculture is mine. He attached 2 documents to the email. It was the standard boilerplate enforcement standard operating procedures and enforcement outline. And I had a follow-up call with both Matt and his supervisor, the Island County Planning Director. And we spoke for over an hour. And I asked again and again, did you learn of an existing and ongoing agricultural activity? And they said, no, just generally that this has been agriculture land for a long time. And I asked again and again, but what activity? Has this landowner ever imported soil to the site? Has this landowner ever filled this wetland with any kind of imported material? And the answer was no, just agriculture. And I even spoke with the landowner, who was very gracious to spend time on the phone with me. You know, I think it was very good-natured of him to be willing to even chat about it. And he said, no, we've never brought fill into this site before. You know, it's always too wet. We tried to work it a few years ago in the summer and we got our tractors stuck down there. So we stopped trying. And so the fact that the county would characterize this as a best management practice consistent activity is either incredibly misinformed or blatantly unlawful. So we've asked for the planning director to revisit this decision. They've declined to do so. We've asked our county commissioners to revisit this decision. They've declined to do so. I would say that we've received expressions of concern and curiosity from at least two of our three commissioners. I've spoken one-on-one with both Jill Johnson and Melanie Bacon, and they've both said, you know, words to the effect of, oh, that's very curious, I'll look into it. But our request has been, we would like to meet with you and the planners who made this decision and really get at whether you understand the law. And we would like you to, if the county can come around to an understanding of the law, we would like them to correct staff's unlawful and precedential substitution of the term ongoing agriculture for ongoing agricultural activities. And the law really does define ongoing agricultural activities pretty well. It's basically something that has happened again and again. So if I have led my cows across that pasture every year for 15 years, and that pasture is part of a wetland, this allows me to continue leading them across that pasture because it is my farming practice. It does not allow me to obtain a brand new herd of cows and put them on a pasture where they've never been if that pasture is a mapped wetland. So we have a 4-point request in relation to this particular site because this redefinition of agricultural activities is so broad that it basically means any person working farmed land can fill any wetland. So correct staff's unlawful substitution of the term, revisit the decision on this particular site, and then invest in professional development and training for the county's planning staff. We think we have good-hearted people trying their best who may just truly not know or not be resourced and supported to do their job well. And develop and train staff in the implementation of written procedures for cases involving critical areas. We got some public records documentation that is so alarming in terms of the gap between what the standard is and what actually took place that, and I'd be happy to share some of those records with folks in a one-on-one context, but you know, the rigor with which this decision was made is so lacking, and the apparent understanding of how to uphold the law is so lacking that I think it poses a tremendous threat to wetlands all over the county. So please contact your commissioners if this does concern you. There are a bunch of ways to do that. One is you can reach straight out to Commissioner Bacon, our District 1 commissioner. This is right in her district. I've asked her to go stand on the public road and look at the site. I think she can see with her own eyes that it isn't the wetland that it once was. These are her contact information here. You can also make a public comment at a board meeting. They meet regularly. They have a regularly scheduled time for public comments. And if you'd like any support in developing a public comment or gaining the confidence to either write or present your perspective on this or any other issue that concerns you, we are offering a free workshop coming up called Finding Your Civic Voice. So you can learn more about that at whidbyenvironment.org/workshops. You can also help make sure that our comprehensive plan values include wetlands. And there's a website, islandcounty2045.com, where you can add comments about the importance of wetlands for our aquifer, for our habitat, and for our county's ongoing well-being. And then finally, we do have a reporting page on our website, whidbyenvironment.org report to WEAN. And that's a place where you can report Western toad sightings. and wetland violations on WEAN's website. So we're really hoping that a combination of public pressure and growing expertise for our county staff can help reconcile this issue so that this doesn't become a case where copycat violators have free reign to fill every farmed wetland in the county. The devastation that would cause for our migratory birds and for our aquifer recharge capacity and for flood control and the safety of downstream communities would just be immeasurably challenging. So thank you so much for listening. I'm looking forward to opening this up for conversation. And I'd be more than happy to share more with people who would like a little more information before they prepare a comment. If you want to know more about the contents of the public record that were so concerning to me, or if you'd like to read our full 11-page report and follow up notes, I'd be more than happy to share. There's a whole lot more that we've tried to do to reconcile this issue that I haven't shared today. So please be in touch if you'd like a more thorough report of our activities around this issue. And then finally, I just want to mention how much I admire the work of Earth Justice and the Center for Biological Diversity in their defense of nature on a nationwide level. And frankly, I admire the work of our organization and my colleagues doing that same kind of protection at a local level. So thank you to every donor who's given to any of these organizations, because we all depend upon donor dollars to do our work. Thank you so much.